Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Pointy Not Sharp. Today we're taking a look at a Japanese Type 30 school bayonet, also known as like a trainer bayonet, training bayonet. You'll hear a number of different names for them. Now these were made to fit training rifles that were used in high schools during the 1930s and the Second World War in Japan. These training rifles were a bit of a mix. So some of them were capable of firing blanks. Some of them were, cap guns, and some of them were just pieces of wood with moving parts, and some of them were just a solid piece of wood. And there was no sort of standard to them either. They were sourced from whatever they could get. They were made in local workshops, and they even used light machine guns as well. That were made by about 6 different manufacturers. They were made to a higher standard than the rifles. And along with those rifles and machine guns came bayonets. Now, as I said, these are made in a lot of different workshops, and there wasn't a whole lot of standardisation to them, and they were made with sort of whatever manufacturers could get their hands on. And despite the name, they weren't actually used by the Japanese Army or Navy for training. They were only used in the school role for drill. And taking a look at it, you see it does have some very standard looking parts, and that's pretty common. So apparently these were made using spare or defective parts if they could get their hands on them. Otherwise, they were just made completely from scratch in local workshops. So I don't have any manufacturer's markings on it because, made in a local workshop, it's not going to have anything like that. Generally, if you do find markings on these, there is one manufacturer who'll leave a stamp on the ricasso. But apart from that, the only markings you'll tend to come across is maybe some kanji on the wooden grip to represent which school the bayonet belonged to. This one doesn't have that. And sometimes rack numbers as well you'll find on the handles or the base of the pommel. This one does have a rack number on the base of the pommel, so we've got 543. But other than that, it's completely clean. Now, taking a look at the actual construction of the blade, it does look very similar to an actual Japanese Type 30. Let me put them up next to each other so you can get a good look. However, there are some subtle differences. So, straight up, the trainer doesn't have an edge at all. Like, that's almost as thick as the spine of the blade. Completely flat down there. Does have a bit of a point, but the actual metal it's constructed of has not gone through a hardening process, so it's still pretty soft, still very malleable. Doesn't have an edge. The fuller is very crude, which is very typical of these trainers. That light there really demonstrates the poor workmanship there, as well as this little nick up here when they were putting the fuller in. Like, you look at the actual Type 30s, and they're sharpened halfway down the blade to about there, and they are very, very sharp, or at least this one is. The fuller is very clean cut, or if not cut, swaged, stamped, whatever process they used to put it in. Then moving down to the crossguard, it's got a very similar look for the Type 30s, except the hook quillen has a slightly different profile. So again, for comparison, you can see this one's got a sharper edge down there, whether this one is quite crude. The wooden grips actually look legit, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were real. And not just the wooden grips, but I've got these nuts or screws, and they're quite crude, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were factory rejects as well. Having a look at, try the other side, what we've got there. But then the reverse, I've literally just got, flathead screws, and that's not what you have here. You do have flathead screws going through these oval pieces, but they're much smaller. Then moving down to the pommel, it's very crude, like the machining is quite bad. That's not damaged, that's from the original manufacturing process. That's, hollow. And the mortise itself, very, very crude. These won't fit onto Arisaka rifles. They will only sort of fit their training rifle, and probably only the training rifle that they were made with. They're not very interchangeable. The parts aren't interchangeable. And the actual locking button itself, it does have a notch in there, but that's not going to attach to anything like that. That is very, very small. The video here is not doing it justice, but it probably sticks out maybe a mil. So I think to keep this on the rifle, you got to hold the rifle upright. One thing that's pretty typical of these bayonets that I've seen a couple examples of now, focus please, focus, is the press button here always seems to come down at a bit of an angle. So this one, focus again, come on. This one here only has a slight angle, but I've seen a few that are a lot more pronounced than this. Now these bayonets, as I've said, were not made to a particular standard. You'll find them in all different kinds of configurations and all different levels of quality. This one is actually very, very good quality. I've seen some that are much, much worse than this. I've seen some that barely resemble Type 30 bayonets at all. And I have had a play around with one of these training rifles. And the one I played with was just a piece of wood, and then it had like a little straight pull cocking handle with a spring to allow it to go forward, but it wasn't capable of firing caps or anything like that. I think Ian McCollum does a really good video on the training machine guns. It's probably worth checking that out. But there's not too much more to say about these training bayonets, really. They were never operational, they were never used, they're not sharp. They usually don't have a point. This one does. They usually come with a scabbard. This one did not. I got this one super cheap, actually. It was being sold as a what was it, a reproduction P1907 for 75 Australian dollars, which is ludicrously cheap. Probably worth, 150, 200 bucks. So I was quite happy with it. A lot of people aren't into collecting these because they were never operational, and they're kind of an oddball in the world of bayonets, but in my opinion, your Type 30 collection isn't complete till you got a trainer. They're pretty cool little bayonets, and I'm very happy with this one. It's a very, very nice little point on it too. Anyway, guys, I think I've covered everything. If I've missed anything or made any mistakes, feel free to correct me below. Thanks for watching.